Hello, YouTubers, subscribers, and Whovians. Um, this video is just a response to what I've just watched, and I haven't done my review for last week's episode yet because I was kind of wanting to wait around until I saw the second half because I had so many unanswered questions from last week. I don't even know where to start on this episode. I hated it. It was absolute shit. Okay, and I knew this would happen when I saw um, that Moffat was writing a two-part finale to the season, and he had already built up so much suspense on this whole Missy story arc and like the Promised Land and the Nether Sphere and people dying and showing up there to talk to Missy and all that stuff. Um, That alone, I knew, was going to be too much to try to resolve in a two-part finale, especially when you spend the entire first half of the two-part finale just kind of dragging your ass around, not really elaborating on anything that you're supposed to be resolving. It's like the whole entire first half of this two-part finale was just filler so that we could lead up to that to the big reveal where the Master is revealed to be Missy. And then along comes part two tonight, and it just fucking spiraled out of control. Like, first of all, like virtually every fucking shot was in chaotic shaky cam. I know a lot of you like don't notice it, but if you look at last week, the way last week was shot, and this is the same director for both parts, so I don't really understand what happened there. But last week, most of the shots were Steadicam shots, but that's not even my worst gripe with this episode. Okay, I am prepared to say this was worse than Love and Monsters. Okay, that's how bad it was. Okay, and the list of reasons why this episode sucks so bad is virtually endless. The Cybermen, if you watched my review last year of Nightmare in Silver, I made like a little comparison of the way the new Cybermen looked and how they looked like a complete ripoff of Iron Man. I actually did a comparison in Photoshop where I tinted the Cyberman's body the colors of Iron Man, and it looked remarkably similar to Iron Man. And if that likeness was not enough, Moffat puts the icing on the cake by having them fly in this story. Cybermen can now fly. Okay, and the whole explanation of how the Cybermen were, the people in the graves were turned into Cybermen is a complete and total contradiction to everything that we learned about the Cybermen in like the last 50 years. Actually, I take that back. Everything we saw about the Cybermen in the story is a complete contradiction of the last 50 years. Even the new series, like this, contradicted last fucking season. Okay, I thought we had agreed last season when we saw Handles that Cybermen were no longer biological beings inside a body. They were almost completely robotic. Okay, but now all of a sudden they're humans inside there again. Just for Danny Pink, of course. Everybody else is a robot. There's actually one shot where a Cyberman gets his head blown off, and it's not like a human spine sticking out of there. It's like a real. It's whenever Danny Pink shoots the Cyberman and blows him up. As soon as Danny Pink was turned into a Cyberman, I already predicted that that's how that part of the story was gonna be resolved. I knew that Danny Pink was gonna be the one that saves the day. Because this is exactly what fucking happened in Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. Okay, you have one Cyberman who is just so compelled by a devotion to duty and a love for the human race that they just can't be turned into a Cyberman. And love and compassion saves the day. It's just. I thought that Nightmare in Silver was a bad Cybermen story. Actually, Yes, I thought that was, to me, Nightmare in Silver is the worst Cybermen story we've got of the new series, but this one blows that one out of the water. Okay, because this was not a Cybermen story. This wasn't even a story about the Master. Like, I don't know what the fuck this episode was about. That's what pissed me off about it. Like, my wife and I just finished watching it, and I just kept sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for a consistent narrative, like for us to fall in line with a consistent plot for the remainder of this two-part story. And last week was fine. Like, it was, the pacing was slow, but the narrative was consistent. And just it just completely fucking spiraled out of control. I knew this was going to happen when, like I said, when I said a minute ago, when I saw that Moffat was writing a two-part finale, my biggest fear was that was this going to turn out like the Pandorica opens in the Big Bang again, or like the Impossible Astronaut in Day of the Moon. And both of those stories, like Day of the Moon was so bad that Moffat had to resort to the Impossible Astronaut ends on a cliffhanger, and then when Day of the Moon started, we had skipped like 2 weeks worth of events, you know, because his story was just too fucking complex to cram into two 45-minute episodes. Okay, and this is why fucking story arcs don't work. Okay, over a course of a season of 13 because if you build up on the arc throughout the entire course of the season, and then you try to resolve it in just 2 episodes, when you spend the whole first episode just fucking piddling around, you get something like this, where it's just, this episode felt like a Cyberman story, a Master story, a romance between Danny and Clara, and a Master versus a Doctor story, all thrown into a fucking blender and just turned on and left on. And just like, they didn't put the lid on good or something, and everything just comes spitting out the top. And then that's what we got for this episode. I've already looked, and of course, you know, the fucking spin teams are already rating this one the best fucking finale ever, you know, just blown away and blah 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 and all that shit. I hated it. It's like, I literally don't know where to start writing a review for this, like scripting a review video, because I'm willing to shoot a review video of the first half because I actually rather enjoyed that. I enjoyed the first half, but this, like, it's the most disappointing episode I've ever watched of Doctor Who. Like, it literally was worse than Love and Monsters, because at the Love and Monsters was shit, okay, but at least it had a consistent narrative. Okay, that's more than I can say for what I just fucking sat through. Okay, that's like... I just saw a post on Facebook where people are asking, so, what did everybody think about Brigadier's appearance as a Cyberman in this episode? Who fucking cares? Like, you couldn't even tell it was the Brigadier. If you had not stated on screen that he was the Brigadier, you never would have fucking known. It was just a fucking Cyberman. And he was in like 2 shots. Like, this episode was very predictable. It was very, unsatisfying because, virtually all of the questions that I've accumulated since the beginning of the season, every time Moffat would touch on his arc, were not answered. Because, like the robots in Deep Breath, they were looking for the Promised Land. What the fuck happened with that? Like, you didn't elaborate on that at all, okay? Robots have no concept of an afterlife, okay, unless we're talking about Crichton in Red Dwarf, where Silicon Heaven is it that he's talking about. But this is not Red Dwarf, this is Doctor Who. The robots in Deep Breath were supposed to be the same robots that were on the SS Madame de Pompadour. They were not the same ship, but they were like the ship that they came from was like the sister ship or something, like Antoinette or something like that. So these are clockwork fucking droids, okay? They don't have a concept of heaven and hell. And even if a robot takes biological components from the human race and replaces its mechanical components with biological components, it's not going to it's not going to inherit some belief in an afterlife and then go like make it their mission to go find the promised land. And then we have the robots in Robot of Sherwood, who were also looking for the promised land. And so one of my questions throughout the season was, what is the promised land? I had assumed it was Gallifrey. That's what I figured it was. And because there's actually a shot in Robot of Sherwood where there's like a planet on the screen or something, and it looks remarkably similar to Gallifrey. And so I had it pinned as Moffat was leading up to something big at the end of the season where, holy shit, I just remembered. I just realized that another one of my predictions, I think the number 20, was that the Doctor will think he's found Gallifrey, but it will turn out to be another one of Moffat's red herrings. Totally fucking called it, you know. And for you asshole that's on Facebook is always bitching at me saying that my predictions are so like so easy to call or something. I bet you didn't call that at the beginning of the season. I made these predictions back in fucking February. Okay, nobody was even suggesting that Gallifrey was going to be a running theme in this season, except me, of course, because I know how fucking predictable Moffat is. I wish that guy would fucking leave. Okay, like he has lost his touch. Let me back up. Okay, it's not that Moffat has lost his touch. Moffat is capable of writing good stories with good concepts. The problem is that he excessively overcomplicates his plots, his story ideas. Like he tries to, and this is a good example, the episode I've just watched. He's trying to cram way too much into one story. Like here we have a gender change with the Master coming back, the Master knowing the location of Gallifrey, or not actually knowing the location of Gallifrey, or knowing the location of Gallifrey and not just lying to the Doctor. And then we have the Master back, and then we have the Cybermen all of a sudden coming back out of nowhere, and then a magical rain coming down and like turning all the bodies in the ground into Cybermen. And then you had like the whole thing with Danny Pink and Clara Oswald. What sucks even more is that we had to sit through like a fucking 10-minute scene at the end with the Clara and the Doctor saying their goodbyes, when I already know that it's been confirmed that Clara is going to be in the Christmas special. Don't even get me fucking started on Santa Claus. Worst episode of Doctor Who ever. I would sit through the Gunfighters 50 fucking times back to back without taking a piss, without getting up to get anything to drink, without getting anything to eat. I would sit through the entire story of the Gunfighters 50 times back to back before I ever sit through this episode again. This one, hands down, is the worst of this season. Like, what was the last one I thought was going to be the worst of the season? In the Forest of the Night? I would rather sit through the In the Forest of the Night than this again. And this one didn't even have kids in it. Well, actually, it had that one kid in it that apparently Danny Pink saved. There was no consistency. There was no plot. What this half of the episode, like, you had your chance, Moffat, in the first half to establish the game plan for this story. Okay, the second half is supposed to be resolving it. By this point in the story, when the second half of the story begins, you're supposed to have already established, like, you're supposed to have already established the Cybermen invasion and the Master and blah 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 and all this stuff. You're not supposed to let that's not supposed to be the climax of the first half, because Russell T Davies did it right with Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, I think it was. Like he went ahead and established the Cybermen invasion in the first half. And even he resolved that story far more plausibly, is that even a word, than you did. Okay, let's see. I got the Doctor and the Brigadier on an airplane in the air. How the fuck can I introduce the Cybermen into this scene with the Doctor in the air. I know, I'll just make the fucking Cybermen fly. I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed in this season because casting. I really thought casting an older actor as the Doctor would make a huge difference in the way the show was presented, and unfortunately, I was grossly mistaken. I'm trying to think of anything at all that I liked in this episode. When it was over. I'm gonna go back on Facebook. I want to see what other people have said about it because I like reading other people's comments on it because just about everybody that's a fan of Doctor Who is more forgiving than I am. Okay, but I don't care if you think I'm being nitpicky when I pick these episodes apart and I give them negative reviews. Okay, I'm just being honest. What Moffat does is he spends the first half, the first 45 minutes, building up suspense and building on more, like raising more questions about where he's going with his story. And then when the second half starts, uh, like this episode, we just spent like 30 minutes just fucking doing nothing. But just running around, yelling at each other, talking, and, just kind of strategizing. And, of course, Danny and Clara are just kind of talking to one another, and Clara's talking to Cybermen, and Cybermen are wadding up pieces of paper and that sort of thing. And then in the last 10 minutes, we try to resolve the whole fucking thing. In the last 10 minutes. The last 10 minutes is when everything that Moffat did in the last 10 minutes of this episode is what he should have been doing the entire length of this episode. This entire episode should have been devoted to resolving the plot, not just, fucking... I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, it's the most disappointing episode. I was more disappointed after watching this than I was watching Voyage of the Damned. I was more disappointed after watching this than I was when I watched Love and Monsters for the first time. And the reason why I don't want to really do a review video of it is because I know that there's absolutely nothing redeeming about it. I mean, it would literally be me in front of the camera for like 20 fucking minutes just ranting about shit I hated about it and shit that didn't make fucking sense. So I am going to do my video on my predictions, though, because I think all but, like, 3, I think, came to pass through this season. And I'm going to do another 20 predictions. I probably will wait till after the Christmas special to do my predictions for next season, because I feel almost certain that next season won't air until August of next year. I've been watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine on Netflix for the last few weeks. And those are 45-minute episodes. And Star Trek has always been episodic format. It's never been serial format. But Star Trek would occasionally deal with 2 or 3-part stories, just like the new Doctor Who has. And I actually watched a 2-part story at Deep Space Nine. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was actually it was a 3-part story. It was the last episode of season 2, and then the next season opened with a 2-parter. Is when they introduced the Jim Hadar. But I had never seen it before. But the plot was consistent. The narrative was consistent. The story was engaging, and it was not overcomplicated. And about halfway through, I mean, each episode is 45 minutes, the same as Doctor Who. And about halfway through the last episode in the trilogy, the writer starts working on resolving the plot. And by the time the credits roll at the end, the plot had been resolved concisely and satisfactorily. There was nothing satisfying about this two-part story. Let me back up. Like I said, part one was fine. I didn't mind part one so much, okay, but this was horrible, okay. As far as a story, as far as a Doctor Who story with the Master, give me End of Time. That was a two-part story. Give me End of Time any day of the week, okay. That's not, obviously, it's not my favorite story with the Master, but one thing that pissed me off about this episode was, and this is something else that Moffat does. He always introduces characters that would actually be good as companions. And I know a lot of you guys don't like Osgood, and I literally agree with you all. Though I think what Moffat was doing with that character was he was trying to present the embodiment of the classic fans. I think that's what he was doing with Osgood, and but my wife and I were sitting here watching Doctor Who, and we were going through that scene where just before Osgood gets killed off, and I was actually thinking, you know, she actually wouldn't be that bad as a companion for the Doctor. But guess what? She gets fucking killed off. You know, just like everybody else that gets introduced, it would act like, this goes back all the way to the Russell T Davies era, like in Bad Wolf, where was it Linda with an I or Linda with a Y or whatever her name was. It was on Satellite 5. It was in the Big Brother house with the Doctor. Like, she would have made a good companion. In fact, the Doctor even offered, they actually had an exchange of dialogue where the Doctor said that whenever they get out of this mess, she was welcome to come along with him. And she would have been great for a companion. Not only would have she have been from the future, but it would just... Oh, I wish fucking Clara was gone. I cannot believe that... I can't believe that Moffat introduced a character of Danny Pink at the beginning of the season for the sake of killing him off at the end of the season. I mean, just... Like, his character has been doing nothing this entire season but leeching on screen time. Okay? And now, it was for nothing. Like, you didn't even do anything with the fucking character. And Missy, of course, was the one that, you know, gave Clara the number in the shop or whatever it was. Oh, well, I totally didn't see that coming. I'll be so glad when he's fucking gone, okay? Because, like, Gareth Roberts, Toby Woodhouse, Mark Gatiss, Stephen Moffat, I want all of them gone. Like, I want a whole new slate of writers. And they need to bring back the script editor, okay? A lot of people have been saying that about when they compare the new series and the original series. Was it Robert Holmes that served as script editor in the original series for so long? And then, see, Philip Hinchcliffe was producer. That was one of the reasons why probably the stories are more consistent and the dialogue is so much better in the original series than in the new series. Because the writers would write the script and then they would go through the hands of the script editor. The script editor would read over it and would make adjustments accordingly, you know, to make it worthy of being aired on TV. But now you can just shit something and we'll put it on the air. And as demonstrated by the episode I just fucking watched, okay? Because I don't care what anybody says, okay? You're welcome to have any opinion you want on it, okay? But from just, I can't see how anybody could have liked it, okay? Because it was just, the only people that even remotely would have liked this episode would have been fangirls who were only watching because there's some romantic attachment between Danny Pink and Clara, you know? And now we don't even have that, you know? So... Santa Claus and fucking Christmas special. Little Red Riding Hood, Robin Hood, Santa Claus. Why not? You know. Flying Cybermen. If it were not for me having a lot of loyal subscribers to my channel and people who actually enjoy my content, I get a lot of people that enjoy my commentary on Doctor Who. If it were not for you guys, I'd stop watching. I'm being honest. I mean, I only watch it now because it's. I have to because I know you guys are always looking forward to my commentary on it, and it's becoming painful to watch, to sit through an episode of Doctor Who. Like I said earlier, like the gunfighters makes me cringe. Okay, but I mean it's really not the story that makes me cringe. It's just that singing. People are always telling me that I have to suspend my disbelief to watch this. Okay, well there is a point where it's just impossible to suspend your disbelief. Okay, flying Cybermen or people digging themselves. How the fuck did the Cybermen get out of their caskets? Okay, people that were buried, in their caskets. Just and clouds burning. Ha, because that's scientific. That makes sense. I guess if you had a cloud of like some combustible material, it's possible. But from what were the fucking clouds made out of that they could combust like that? And why didn't anybody else think of that? Because they did that in the Suntaran stratagem. I may do a review video of the first half, but I really don't want to do a review video of the second half. But if you guys want it, I will do it. I will write a script, and it's probably going to require me to have to watch that episode again because I would like to go through it scene for scene, and I'm gonna have to jot down things that I didn't like about it because there was just literally it's from start to finish. That it was suck. The fucking title sequence. Did anybody catch that? The title sequence had Clara's name first and the Doctor second. Had Jenna Coleman first, then Peter Capaldi, and then the face in the title sequence was Clara, not the Doctor. It really breaks my heart because I know that when Doctor Who is gone, when it's off the air, it's going to be just like Star Wars, the two Star Wars trilogies. It's going to be where before George Lucas did the prequels, Star Wars was one of the most well-respected, well-renowned science fiction films in history. There was no fan. I mean, you had like really, really hardcore fans to the original film that thought The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi sucked, but the vast majority of Star Wars fans considered all three of those to be golden, gems, perfect, 10 out of 10 from start to finish. And then George Lucas came along and did the prequels. And as I said before, it just forever tainted that image of Star Wars, because even fans that were new, like the younger fans of Star Wars, thought the prequels were just silly, and they were. Okay, maybe I'll do a video on that one day. But when I look at Doctor Who, I look at the original series of Doctor Who, and I see the original trilogy of Star Wars. When I look at new Doctor Who, I see the prequels and all of these spin-offs that have cropped up as a result of the prequels. Like, I was thinking the other night about a DVD that I got one year for Christmas or something. It was called Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and it's one of those little CGI cartoon things. That was, I don't even know why. I think my brother got it for me, but I don't know why he got it for me. But being a diehard Star Wars fan, I sat down and watched it, and it was. I mean, you could tell that it was aimed for kids. It was aimed at kids. It wasn't aimed at adult fans of Star Wars because it was all cartoon, CGI, and there were frequent moments of comic relief. There were like little quirky, like like a stormtrooper bumping his head, or a stormtrooper getting hit on the head, or like little cartoon sound effects here and there, or just. It wasn't like a serious take on the Star Wars, the story behind Star Wars, like the actual films were. And well, I should say the original first films. The prequels loosened that grip pretty bad. They really did not take the story as seriously in the prequels as they did the original trilogy. But that's if you compare that Clone Wars, the way that Clone Wars DVD is, to the original trilogy of Star Wars, there is a distinct contrast between the tone of the two films. And that's what I see when I look at Doctor Who. When I compare the new series of Doctor Who to the original series, I see that distinction, like that contrast in tone. Doctor Who is, there's always been this debate about whether or not Doctor Who is science fiction or fantasy. And my position on that has always been that it's been, first and foremost, it's been science fiction. I mean, I will admit that there are some fantasy elements in it. But, and I always get the same arguments. You know, people say that it's fantasy because it's an alien traveling in a blue police box that, you know, can travel in time and space. And when you say it like that, it does sound silly, but what you're neglecting to mention is that everything about the Doctor and his existence and the TARDIS has been given a rational scientific explanation. It's been explained with technology. It hasn't just been like Harry Potter waving a wand and it's happening. So it's not like in the Forest of the Night where, you know, shit just fucking disappears into a dust of pixie dust and then everything's hunky-dory. But it's always been my position that Doctor Who was first and foremost science fiction, and it was second fantasy. And one of the stories of the original series that always stands out when we get to talking about fantasy and Doctor Who, it always stands out in my mind was the Mind Robber with the second Doctor. And but the writer for the Mind Robber, I don't remember his name, he incorporated the element of fantasy within the story. Like it wasn't like what Moffat does, where he just writes fantasy shit willy-nilly and just, you know, doesn't bother with an explanation. In the Mind Robber, the Doctor they actually jump to some other dimension, and it's like a dimension, the land of fiction or whatever it was, where all of these fictional characters like Robin Hood and, you know, Rumpelstiltskin and all them, they actually existed in this dimension, and so you had more flexibility in that story for doing something along the lines of Harry Potter, because I mean, you were in another dimension, you were in the land of fiction, so I mean, you know, the sky's the limit. But when you return to the dimension that Doctor Who takes place in, you're subject to the rules and laws of that universe again. And the rules and laws of this universe are explained scientifically, not with Harry Potter waving a magic wand. So that's something that writers don't do now for Doctor Who. Like when they write a story, I've been saying this for years, it's more about the interaction between the characters and development of the characters than it is about explaining the story to the viewer. You know, and I get heat for that all the time too. People are telling me that I shouldn't be, you know, well, I don't expect an explanation for every little thing on it, you know, just accept it or whatever. And I don't want every fucking detail, every damn frame on the screen explained verbally on screen, but you have to at least explain the plot, the story to the viewers so they know what the fuck is going on. Like, I don't want to sit in front of the telly for 45 minutes and just watch fucking characters talk to one another, okay? When they're not even like, you can't tease us with such an elaborate plot over the course of the season, like, you know, the Master coming back and the Cybermen and, you know, the Promised Land and dead people coming back and blah 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 blah. You can't tease us with all that shit and then just fucking spend the whole the episode designated for the resolution. You can't just fucking piddle around the whole damn season or the whole episode and just have characters talk to one another, because it's very dissatisfying for the viewer. For a viewer like me who actually fucking is acknowledging what I'm watching, and instead of these numbnuts that fucking just sit through it and then instantly rave about how fantastic it was, regardless of how bad it sucked. So, you people are probably paid to do that. Who am I kidding? You know, if everyone watched Doctor Who, I mean, this is what people don't understand, okay? I will admit that I'm very critical of Doctor Who, okay? But I'm not overly critical of just the new series of Doctor Who. I'm overly critical of everything I watch, okay? And I treat the original series with equal prejudice. Like, I don't sit through an episode of original, like, I don't sit through the Twin Dilemma or the Gunfighters and think, damn, well, it's the original series of Doctor Who, so it was awesome. It's not like that, okay? The Gunfighters is not the best episode of the original series, okay? And neither is the Twin Dilemma. But compared to what we've seen in the new series of Doctor Who, I mean, they're masterpieces. This is exactly what happened with Pandorica Opens and The Big Bang. He spent so much fucking time in the first half building on this overcomplicated, like, excessively complicated story that there was not enough time in 45 minutes in the second half to concisely resolve everything. But what made it worse is that he didn't even try to resolve anything. I mean, I hated it. It made no fucking sense. It was completely implausible. And you suck, Moffat. You suck. That's all I gotta say. You know, I hated it, and once again, if you guys want me to do a review vid of it, I will try to sit through it again and like take notes and write a script. But honestly, I try not to do videos like this where they're unscripted because they end up being so long like this, and I know you guys don't want to sit through like an hour of me ranting. I want to wait to hear what Moffat says is going to be in store for us in next season because you know, the reason why I did that prediction video was because it was the whole purpose of doing that video was to wait till the end of the season because Moffat said at the beginning of the year that this season was going to be completely, drastically different than anything we had seen in the previous 7 seasons. And it was going to be more like classic Who, and Doctor Who was going to return, you know, the whole same fucking bullshit he gave us before Series 5. And the reason why I did that prediction video, though, was because after the season was over, I would reflect on how many predictions came to pass, and it would determine whether or not the season was actually different from the last 7. And because each of the predictions I made, yes, they were very they made one person on Facebook made some comment like I might as well just be predicting that characters will be breathing or something. He made it sound like my predictions are very common, you know, occurrences. They are. That's exactly why they were made fucking predictions for this season, is because they've been common occurrences since Series 1. And in order for the season to be completely different from the last 7 seasons, none of those predictions would have to come to pass. It would have to be, I mean, you would have to break ties with everything that's been consistent since the last 7 seasons. And he didn't do that. Nearly all of my predictions came to pass. So one must, like, inevitably conclude that this season overall has been more of the same. It's been pretty much the same thing we've got the last 7 seasons, just with different episode titles, different actors, and maybe a very, very, very subtle shift in tone. So, like I said, I want to wait to see what Moffat says is going to be in store for us next season because I have a feeling he's going to spout some bullshit again, like, you know, well, this season the Doctor is going to search for Gallifrey or some bullshit like that. I'll actually even make that a prediction, that that's going to be one of Moffat's agendas for next season. Actually, Moffat is going to tell you that the Doctor trying to find Gallifrey is going to be one of his agendas for this season, but just like this season, it will end up being another red herring, and the Doctor will not have found Gallifrey. So, and look here, motherfucker, okay? We haven't heard anything about next season, okay? So you cannot fucking rant at me for making predictions that are regular occurrences because neither you nor I have heard anything about what's in store for us next season. But I'm already making a prediction about next season. And if that prediction comes to pass, then it's clear that I know Moffat better than he knows himself. Okay? And it's a testament to how fucking repetitive the series has got, and it's why the series is going to be gone from, it's going to be off the air after series 10 unless something dramatically changes. So eventually people are going to catch on. Evidently it takes longer for these sheep to fucking catch on that they've been watching the same old shit for the last 7 years, but they'll catch on eventually. And when they do, then you're screwed because now your whole entire audience realizes just how fucking repetitive you've become. So I think Moffat's agenda is to literally, like, I think he's trying to. I think somebody's already made a comment on Facebook about this. Not only is Moffat trying to put his name on the new series of Doctor Who, he's trying to make himself like the face of new Doctor Who. I think he's trying to put his face on everything that was original Doctor Who because he's taking every classic element and taking his shit on it. He's putting his brand on it. The Brigadier, Osgood, the Zygons, the Sontarans, the Silurians, the Doctor, the Master, the Companion, who else? The Cybermen, the Daleks. Oh, shit. I totally called it, by the way. There was actually a movie, there was actually a promotional poster for this two-parter where the Doctor was holding an old Cyberman head from one of their previous, presumably from the Invasion. And everybody's like, hey, I wonder if like the classic Cybermen are going to be in this one. No, Moffat would never do that, okay? Because I knew I predicted it to a T, okay? Moffat said with Asylum of the Daleks that all of the classic style Daleks since '63 would be in that episode. And guess what? They were in that episode, except that they were background fucking scenery and only like 2 shots. Okay, and the same thing happened in this one, okay? They make a fucking promotional poster, like blatantly advertising the fact that the classic Cybermen are going to have some sort of role in this episode, and then it ends up being one fucking shot where the Cyberman head is thrown down on the ground. You fucking suck, Moffat. I'll be so fucking glad when you're gone. Okay? You know who I wish had been turned into a Cyberman and had come out of their grave? Robert Holmes and Philip Hinchcliffe. Okay? Because if they had not been turned into an actual Cyberman, like the Brigadier was, they would have fucking hunted you down. Yeah. Okay, that's my rant. That's my initial thoughts on that episode. Like, I just got through watching it, like an hour ago, and it was horrible. I hated it. It sucked. Crap. 0 out of 10 for me. That's what it gets from me. No stars out of 5 stars. 0 out of 10. Worst scoring episode of Doctor Who ever. And that's not being overly critical. That's being honest. See you guys next week.